a Christian Catholic, but he's also a really erudite European. He's a connoisseur of wine. He's a classically trained amateur pianist who knows, obviously, European music and actually plays on a regular basis. He's versed in art and art history of Europe. So he is a deeply cultured European as well as a deeply devout Catholic. So I think his recognition of the threat of European civilization and culture, which is not just Christianity, but is the great books of Western tradition, all these things that I think he holds very dearly. I think he genuinely views Islam as a threat to the perpetuity of that tradition. And I hope I'm not doing him an injustice, but that I think there are many intellectual Westerners that have that view. And in some ways, to be fair, I think they're justified in it.
And that view, you think, has crossed the Atlantic?
I do, yeah. No, I think there are many intellectual Westerners that are deeply troubled by Islam and the demographic threat of Islam. Europe and America are graying cultures. Japan is a graying culture. I mean, these are graying cultures. The birth rates in Europe are disastrous. So, you know, I think allowing a lot of Eastern Europeans, and I heard this from Lord Tebbit once. I was on a talk show with him, and he mentioned how if we allow the Poles in, after one generation, they're English, even though they have a name like Wachowski, but they're basically English. Whereas these other people, like Pakistan, you know, they don't become English. So I think he was articulating something that Westerners feel, is that there are differences, deep differences in these cultural divides. And in some ways, it's a resistance to allow a truly global culture to emerge. And that's what's happening. And Obama is, I think, a profound embodiment of that truth, that there is a new culture emerging. It's a culture where a Luo tribesman from a small little village in Kenya who grew up herding goats as a little boy comes to America on a scholarship, marries and impregnates a woman whose son goes on to become president of the United States, elected in a country that is predominantly white, and from a tribe that would have a very difficult time being elected president in Kenya, because a lot of people don't know this, but the recent riots in Kenya the vice president was Luo. So you know, the Luo tribe is a weak tribe in Kenya. So the transcending tribalism and moving beyond that and recognizing that something's going on, and it's quite profound. So I think there is an emerging global culture that there are many people threatened by it. You know, the Norton Anthology is largely Western civilization, but now we're seeing Persian poetry kind of cropping in and other things cropping in. This is the change. You know, when we talk about so much of our history has been Greece and onward, whereas suddenly it's like, no, China's been around for a long time. They have a role. The Hindus have a role here. The Arabs have a role. The Persians, the Muslims, you know. I mean, it's this confluence of many civilizations to create even Western civilization, which is not purely Western. It's an amalgam of many different cultures and civilizations. So I feel like in many ways that's what's emerging, and there is a real desire to try to hold on to something which is normal. It's a human thing, but it's not going to work. It won't work.
In what way won't it work?
Well, in the way that these young people, you know, I don't know where Media's background is, but probably South Asian. Pakistan. So she's here in America, but she brings with her a background that she brings it with her wherever she goes, in her class, in amongst her friends, and that's enriching American culture. It's not depriving it. It's enriching it. It's enhancing it. And the young people, I mean, were overwhelmingly, you know, they were not in the McCain-Palin camp, which is, because I don't even want to look at it politically. You know, I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I want to transcend politics, and when I'm talking about Obama and McCain and what it means in terms of this emerging culture, which is a global culture. That's what's happening. Young people does not mean to somebody who's 25 and grew up with hip-hop what race meant to somebody who is 45 and grew up with the Beatles. It's a different experience of race and culture, and there's a lot more fluidity, there's a lot more receptivity, and so that is what is emerging, and the Buchanans of the world that are trying to hold on to the death of the West. No, there's a rebirth. A new West is emerging. The old West will not die, but it's going to change. It's going to transform. And that's the nature of language. It's the nature of genetics. It's the nature of culture. Everything changes. That's the very nature of the world that we're in. And so trying to preserve what is precious from the past and yet relevant in the present to prepare us for the future, those are challenges. I don't want to discard you know, I mean, I was reading Plato this morning. I don't want to throw away Western thought or, you know, dead white men. I don't believe that. And Plato wasn't even really white by today's standards anyway.
And do you think Muslim leadership in the United States is managing to cope with all this change going on around them?
No. Muslim leadership, you know, we're in a whirlwind. I mean, we don't have leadership. We don't have institutions. You know, Islam is very new in the American experience, and it has largely come from dysfunctional cultures, both the African-American culture that has embraced Islam, that has a lot of dysfunctionality, but also the immigrant cultures that brought all their dysfunctionalities. So it's going to take time to learn the tools of effectiveness. That's going to happen, but we're far from it now. So I think, I mean, there's cause for optimism out there, but it's cautious optimism because there's an incredible amount of ineptitude in our communities, inabilities to really maximize our potential and utilize the resources of the society that we're in.
What about the imams in the United States? Leadership with the religious clerics in the United States?
Well, I think there's a lot of great imams in the United States. Talib Abdul Rashid in New York, Imam Siraj, Imam Majid in Washington, D.C., Imam Zaid Shakir, many really, really excellent leaders. Ingrid Mattson is a good example of that. I mean, she's an imama. You know, there's good people, but institutionally, we're still talented individuals. We haven't created the institutions that are going to enable individuals to become synergistic, to where there's a lot more productivity, and their individual talents are enhanced by institutions and by infrastructure. So we're not there yet. We're far from there. But there are many talented individuals. Intisar Rab, another woman, Hinna Azam. I mean, many good people out there. Dr. Amr Abdullah Farouk, Dr. Sherman Jackson, yourself. There are many. Dr. Suleiman Yang, Dr. Khalid Blankenship. I mean, I really think we have awesome talent in this country. And upcoming people I don't even know about. So I'm optimistic on that front. In terms of institutions, we're way behind. No endowments that are worthy of mentioning, although all these endowments are getting wiped out right now from the Harvard's probably lost a third of their endowment.
Now, what do you see as the main threat to the United States, to American society?
I think probably the fear. you know, stupidity.
You know, Noam
I mean, stupidity.
Chomsky said the same thing.
Yeah,
Fear.
Fear is a big one, but stupidity is another one. Marx considers stupidity one of the 5 most important factors in human event, you know, human history. Just stupidity, doing stupid things, like invading Iraq was a very stupid thing to do. I mean, you know, country dumb. Some people play country dumb. So a lot of people made a lot of money. But in terms of, for the interests of America, it was very stupid. For the interest of a handful that made fortunes, it was probably, you know, if you don't have any morality or common decency, I mean, it was probably a good move.
So fear.
I think fear, stupidity, I don't, to me, that, you know, I'm not going to, I don't like the fact that a lot of Muslims don't believe that there is no threat out there. You know, the crazy Muslims are not a threat. Crazy white people are a threat. There's a lot, individuals, and I've said this many times, and I believe this, individuals can do today what pre-modern armies could not do in terms of just destructive force. So from that point of view, I do think that the danger of you know, of violence perpetrated by small groups of extremists, and I don't think that, I mean, Oklahoma was an example of I don't know if they were white supremacists, but you know, Timothy McVeigh was definitely motivated by a kind of perverted sense of patriotism. I mean, he really felt that he was a patriot. And I actually read his correspondence with Gore Vidal. And he was a very intelligent young man. I think Gore Vidal was very struck by his intelligence. So that's an example of somebody that just, I don't know if his wiring was wrong or he just got in the wrong group of people. But that is a major problem today. I don't think it is in any way, shape, or form warrants the type of response that has occurred. I don't. And I would much rather live with the potential of being blown up with my freedoms and civil liberties completely intact. I really would. I would just rather live with that possibility than to enter into this kind of Orwellian type of society where everybody's afraid of a bag being put down. I mean, Colonel Atta Rahim, I don't know if you knew him. He was Pakistani.
In London?
Yeah, in London.
Relative of mine.
Oh, great. Beautiful man. I only met him twice. But one of the things, he was in the British Museum once doing some research for a book, and there was a bomb threat. And everybody started running, and he just didn't get perturbed. And somebody just asked him, aren't you going to run? There's a bomb threat. And he said, how do you know you're not running towards the bomb? That's such a great answer.
Now, you yourself, let's have a brief introduction to how you converted, why you converted, what you thought you saw in Islam that attracted you.
Okay. Well, I mean, I was raised in a pretty open-minded, probably more philosophical family. I was baptized and served the altar as an altar boy in the Orthodox Church. So my great-grandfather built the first Orthodox church west of Chicago in San Francisco. So, and my grandfather helped build the first Orthodox church in Northern California, there in Marin County. So, but my father is much more in a philosophical tradition. He was raised a devout Catholic, but I think philosophy has been much more, and literature, Shakespeare in particular, which he taught for a while. So I was just raised very open-minded, and my mother made it very clear to me that religion is largely arbitrary. So I at a very early age, I mean, she made that very clear to me that people are only generally follow religions of the families that they're born into, and there's something very arbitrary about that. That if I was born in Sri Lanka, I'd be a Buddhist or a Hindu. So that really struck me. You know what Heidegger calls thrownness. You know, you're kind of a historical product, and most people don't ever challenge their thrownness. The fact that they're just thrown into an environment that determines how they view the world, what they think, how they worship, all those practices. So I was fortunate in, I think, being able to look